Everybody.
Recording.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome.
A flood of people just entered the room.
Glad to have you guys here. It's going to be fun. It's always a good demo with Myles.
I'm recognizing faces. Naomi over there for sure.
Yes, Natalie, you'll have access to the recording. We're going to post it on YouTube afterwards.
I'm gonna watch what I say now. Okay.
Oh. Okay. We'll just give a minute for anybody else who's going to come join. How's everybody enjoying the weather? I'm not sure if everybody's from over here, but in Toronto, but it's been interesting today.
We had snow.
Yeah?
No.
Nuts.
Yeah, that was a big surprise after the weather we've had lately, huh?
I saw a picture of a friend who lives somewhere downtown, I think, college and who knows where. But I thought it was either a heavy raindrop or a snowflake, like you just mentioned. I'm like, no way, that's got to be a raindrop.
Yeah.
There was snowflakes, that's for sure.
No, thank you.
Well, we really do need the rain for the plants, though. I have to
Yeah.
put that positive in there.
That's true, yeah. No, the rain is okay, but the snow caught me off guard there.
I do remember a May 24 long weekend camping, and it's snowing on us during that weekend.
Mm,
So it's kind of expected these days.
that's fun.
It does feed into that Canadian stereotype, though. That
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
It's tradition. You have to do it.
Okay, well, I feel like we could probably get started. No one else is popping in, so this is good. Okay, well, welcome everybody. I know I see a lot of familiar names here. So today we have our screen printing demo with Myles. This is an intermediate level more, but he's a great teacher, so I'm sure it'll go well if you're not as caught up in everything. We definitely would love if you guys ask questions throughout. Just throughout the demo, we just ask maybe more to ask the questions in the chat. Rachel and I will ask Myles them directly just so that everything moves a little bit faster. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A session. And yeah, that's pretty well it. So we'll send it over to Myles and we'll get started. Oh, actually, also, we just are also going to ask that everybody put their screens into speaker view so that we're going to pin Myles's screens, and then that way you'll be able to see him the whole time. All right, take it away, Myles.
Hang on, I've got two screens going on again. So let me make sure I'm at the right angle. Can you see my two screens? Ah, excellent. That's perfect. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. A quick little intro about me. Speedball decided in their wisdom to say, hey, can you do some random demos for us? And I'm like, absolutely. I'm teaching currently in South Carolina at Winthrop University in Rock Hill. I've been here for almost 1 year come August. Pandemic, job change. I was in upstate New York for the past 4 years before that, but I'm from Collingwood, Ontario. That's my hometown. That's where my parents are. I lived downtown for years. I miss it incredibly, and I'm stuck currently here due to the border being closed, or else I'd probably be home right now visiting my parents. Anywho, I'm a printmaker. I teach all things print, color theory, 2D, digital print, screen printing, intaglio, etching, woodblock, and then I incorporate technology in my practice as well.
Nice.
The last time we did this demonstration, we did kind of basic introduction screen print. So we played with screen filler. We played with the drawing fluid. And then there was kind of this interest in doing something a little more, I don't want to say professional, but a little more challenging maybe to get some photographic results. So what I'd like to show you today is the way that I do CMYK screen separations, which is cyan, yellow, magenta, and black 4-layer print process. using a little bit of technology, a little bit of Photoshop to make 4 different screens to get a photographic result when you put those layers back together. I'm going to show you my way of doing it. It is not the only way of doing it, but mine is probably the cheapest. So I like saving money, and I try to save you money too. On that other screen there, I've got a little kind of rundown of the game plan for today. We're going to start with jump into Photoshop a little bit, talking about making positives, coding a screen really quick. I know we saw that last time as well, but it might be helpful to see it again. So exposing that screen. If you're familiar with that process, grab a coffee. That's your perfect time to do that. We'll jump back. I'll show you how to register all of those 4 colors together. We'll talk a bit about ink, because I have a few little tips and tricks that I do. The pulling technique, reclaiming a screen with the chemistry, and then some Q&A. Sound like a game plan? All right. I'm going to share my screen. And you should be able to see this beautiful image of Lake Como. If I click on the drop-down menu, I want to make sure, can you see the drop-down? You cannot.
No.
Uh-oh. I want you to see every little nitbit. So let's do this.
I could see the drop-down menu.
Yeah.
You
I
could?
see it too.
Yes, I could.
Okay,
Yep, I could see it too.
excellent. Can we see it now, everybody?
Yes.
Great, okay, because if you can't see the details, there's no point in showing you. So photographic imagery and Screenprint, I always encourage people, obviously, to take their own images. For demo purposes, I found this and acquired it and appropriated it from Google. When I'm searching, I'm looking for high quality images, free to use images, and then I alter them and make them what I want them to be. I'm working on an existing print, and I'll give you a quick little preview and then I'll show it to you better in a moment, which is this, which is a kind of obscured, one of those cheap plasticky chairs that you have for the summer. My game plan is to print a full color image of Lake Como off to the side of it. So I'm choosing this kind of rectangular composition because it's really easy to register to a 90-degree angle, and that will make more sense in a moment. The colors I have in this image right now are exactly how I want them to print. So this is the important stage in Photoshop where you're going File, Open, Image, and you want to make sure you have a few things before you start altering them. I'm going to go to Image, Image Size, and I want to make sure I'm working at a resolution of 300. A large image, which means I can really alter it and make lots of modifications, and it won't affect my image quality when I come to print it, okay? Right now it's huge. It's like 22 inches by 33 inches, way too big. I want it something closer to 5 by 7.5. But change that resolution. That's going to be important when we get to the next step. Not much changes visually, but it does in terms of the file quality. If I zoom in right now, lots of information. It's a little tiny bit pixelated, but that's fine. When I print it, it's going to be 5 by 7-ish, quite small. I chose this image because it has lots of secondary colors in it. So when you think about CMYK, you've got a screaming blue, a screaming magenta, a screaming yellow, and then a black. Like, we know how those are going to print. What I'm really interested in is how those colors are going to be semi-transparent, how they overlap, and give us the whole spectrum of colors that we want to print. So this orangey color in this dwelling here will have a little bit of magenta, a little bit of yellow, and then the details in the pop come from the black layer over top of that. Let me give you a visual of what I mean exactly. So these are CMYK printed angle suggestions. So this is getting probably the most technical that we'll get today. The one on the top left is usually the one that I end up playing with. But for today, I wanted to try the bottom left just to see if there is any difference. If you think of your screen like a screen door, like you have a mesh on it. And your mesh count is really important. Like that's how many and how tight your mesh is. We're going to be playing with a 230 mesh count. And that's why I'm going to give you these specific angles today. If you want something incredibly detailed, incredibly photographic, you might want to use a 300 or a 310 mesh. I always suggest starting with a 230 because it always works. It won't fill in as quickly for you. It's more user-friendly. It's good for paper, and you can get away with some fabrics with it too. 230 is usually my go-to for a really versatile screen. If you picture your screen like a screen door, it's got a grid of holes across it. You need to change the angle of the dot you're putting on your image for every single color. If you have, look at that top left image, 45 degrees for my black. If you also had 45 degrees for the magenta, you would just be covering up all of your magenta in the exact same spot with the black, and you wouldn't see any magenta. So if you shift each color ever so slightly, you get that overlap of the two colors to make your secondary color. That'll make a bit more sense. If you kind of squint your eyes a little bit, you'll see a circle at the bottom left of each one of those little spectrum grids, okay? Photoshop has a bit of a chunky, gnarled, weird looking dot. It's not a perfect circle like this. You can buy some really expensive ripping software and spend $600 on it and get a perfect circle, or you can do the free way that I'm just about to show you. Another visual just before we get started, we're gonna do something similar to this. I always look for fluffy, colorful cats when I'm doing my demonstration, even though I have allergies. We're gonna print the blue first, because it's easier to see blue when you're registering through a yellow mesh screen. I flip it up sometimes. Most people do magenta second. Sometimes I do yellow second. I haven't seen a huge difference. And then you finish it off with a bit of that contrast with the black. One artist who I always go to have a look at is Patrick Caulfield, which I probably mentioned many times before in the last little demo. But this beautiful screen print, you got areas of flat color, areas of flat line, and then you have the photographic element in the middle. So your whole image doesn't have to be a CMYK photographic thing. Why not, switch it up a little bit? Okay, back to Lake Como. So I know I have a 300 DPI image. I know I'm currently working in a image mode, RGB color. I want to be working in CMYK because that corresponds to the inks that I'm about to use. All right, I'm going to change my mode, image mode, CMYK. Visually on your screen, not much is going to change, and that's actually good. On the right-hand panel over here, sorry, I'm trying to move you all around a bit. On the right-hand panel over here, you're usually on layers. So that's the image that we're altering right now. If you click on channels, you'll see that it breaks down for you, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. I'm going to turn some of these off just to give you an idea. There's your black layer, okay? So all of your shadows, a little bit of your details. And if I just turn on the yellow, that's what it would look like if I printed those two images together, okay? It looks interesting. Maybe you just need the two. It's a duotone, If I add another layer of magenta, I'm gonna get those warm oranges coming through. You start getting that nostalgic feeling of like a 70s, kind of early 80s Polaroid. And then you throw in the cyan, brings the whole image back to like that photographic quality that we're after today. The little hard thing to find now is once you've clicked on that channels option, there's a little tiny hamburger on the right-hand side, 3 or 4 lines. Click on that, and you're going to split your channels, okay? Split channels. And what that does for me is, at the top of the screen here, it separates it into 4 different layers for me. You don't even have to do anything, it's magic. So if I click on the cyan, you'll see there are grays, and we know that we cannot expose gray to a screen. The screen doesn't know what to do with it. It needs black or it needs white. So at this stage, you need to turn this image into a bitmap file, which is white and black and dots and nothing else. I'll zoom in. Yeah, you get your grays all over the place. So here's what we do. We go to image, mode, bitmap. This is the cyan layer. It asks you a whole bunch of random questions. Your output needs to be the same as your resolution. So we already made our file 300. So just make sure your output stays at 300 as well. So I'm suggesting 300 so we get more quality from the bitmap. If that says 72, go back to that original image, change it to 300, then go through those stages again. The method is really important. Like, definitely have fun and see what's going on in there, but choose halftone screen for what we want to do today. We're looking for a photographic result. Halftone screen, click OK. And here's where you get to have a little bit of fun. I'm going to start from the bottom up because I like making things awkward. The shape is the type of dot you're going to make these files into. Round and ellipse will give you the most photographic results. Diamonds are cool, lines are cool, crosses, whatever you want. I'm going to click round just to show you how weird the Photoshop dot actually is. Angle. So I just showed you that image with the angles. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Right here. We're going to try for these ones down here. So my cyan is 15 degrees. So thankfully it's already in there for me, 15. Frequency is really fun. So the higher the frequency, the more small the dot is compressed into an area, the more photographic it is. However, you could do a really chunky dot pattern and think of Liechtenstein, think of newspapers, how they're printed. When you zoom in really close and you see every single little dot. Because we have a 230 mesh, it can only handle so much information. 50 will give you a very photographic result. Any more, it can't really handle it. If you're using that 300, 310 mesh that I mentioned before, you could probably push it up to somewhere around 65 or 70 and still be able to print that really nicely. So picture like one of your holes in your screen mesh. You can only put so much information in that, okay? If I put 5 in for the frequency, this is going to be chunky. Let's see what it does. Bam. Really interesting. Not exactly what we want to do right now. Edit, undo bitmap, image, mode, bitmap. Let's do it again. 300 for the output, halftone screen. Let's do 30. Old newspaper vibes. I'll zoom in. You'll notice there's only black, only white. And that's what I mean by that really weird Photoshop dot. It's not a beautiful circle. It is chunky. But for our purposes, it's going to work completely fine. So you could leave it as is, or we're going to make it a little more detailed. Image, mode, bitmap, same steps. I'm going to bump it up to 50. It's still fairly easy to print, and you still get photographic results without worrying about it being too tight or blowing out completely. Let's zoom out. Okay, so that's our cyan layer, and believe it or not, we got to do that again to all of them. Our magenta, what was our magic number for magenta? 45 degrees. Image, mode, bitmap. Okay, change that angle, 45 degrees. Keep the frequency the same. If you start messing around with your frequencies, you're going to get a really cool image, but you're not going to get a photographic image of the same quality. Okay. So I would do that for your cyan, yellow, magenta, black, and then print them out. So when you're talking about printing out positives, the most cost-effective way is to use a really old LaserJet printer. okay? I print them out on the thinnest, cheapest paper I can find, and then I oil them up. So this is a regular piece of photocopy paper with one of our images on it. I've taken a little bit of vegetable oil and made it transparent. I did this one maybe 3 or 4 days ago, and it's still pretty semi-transparent. Over maybe 2 weeks, you might have to oil it up again, but that costs you hardly anything. Alternatives for you, you could take your file, you could probably take it to some printing service and they'll print it out onto a acetate for you, or you can buy the 8.5 by 11s and feed them through your own printer. One side works better than the other. One side is meant for holding the ink, one is not. I always struggle with that. If you print it on the acetate, you don't have to expose it to your screen as long because the light is not trying to break through that semi-transparent positive that you just made. So just think, how much light do I need to break through that paper? So you've got what? You've got your acetate, you've got your oiled positives. That's pretty much it for this this process, okay? Any questions so far as we go? A top tip for you, when you're printing out these CMYK positives, you're gonna wanna label them because one looks just kind of like the other as you print them out, especially if you don't have a very colorful image. So that's why I have these little weird tabs on the side here, okay? So what I'd like to do now really quickly is code a screen, just one. I have a second screen dried, ready to go. I'm going to take my other camera, move over to another section, expose one of them. I'm going to blow it out really, really quick just to show you that whole process, and then come right back here to my whole setup. Everything's ready to go for a quick printing process, but I don't want to skip that middle part, all right? I'm going to turn a few things around so you can see where I'm running to. And feel free just to yell at me because I'll be back in maybe 4 minutes. Can you see my second camera?
Yeah, do you mind just turning off the screen share so that the other ones go bigger?
Absolutely. Turning off this one, you mean?
Yeah, the screen sharing.
That
Perfect.
makes complete
There,
sense.
now we can see the other ones better.
Oh, great. Okay. So you'll see what I'm doing over there. I just screwed in 2 pieces of wood just so I can prop up my screen underneath. I'm going to coat them there really quick. And then that light orb in the back is my exposure unit. So it takes roughly 2 minutes and 40 seconds for these oiled up positives using the light unit that I have. That's not too bad. That's pretty quick. I'm going to do 1 coating of the screen. I only do 1. Unless you're doing an addition of 100, you might want to double coat both sides of your screen. But if you just do 1 side, you'll get more precision, more detail out of these positives. Big screen.
Hey, Miles, can you hear us over there?
Yeah.
So we have a question from Sharon. She's just asking if this process can be done with Photoshop elements.
I believe so, yes. Because I have quite a few students who have taken Photoshop. Yes, I can. Can you hear me okay?
That's a little muffled.
I want to say Yes, but I don't know 120%. I know Photoshop is not the only process. Procreate, I think you can even Procreate as well. And there are some free online sites. You can just upload your image and then they'll do the separations for you. So this will take maybe 15, 20 minutes to dry. One quick little coating, really, really thin. I'm gonna grab another one that's dry and quickly expose it. It's really helpful if I actually grab the positive to expose to the screen at the same time. So you can also make this DIY friendly, just while that's exposing. I'm just thinking, I showed it to you before with the whole bulb setup that Speedball has. Works incredibly well. Like it's a really short exposure time. I think it's less than 4 minutes. So you can do photographic stuff at home if you don't have all the fancy equipment that I've kind of got here as well. Like you don't need it, okay? Give that 20 seconds, just because I want you to see it actually blown out. Before, when we were doing it with the emulsion and with the like the drawing fluids, it's very clear when you're blowing it out and you can see the details. I want you to be able to see the little tiny dot structure of the bitmap. Similar to this from last time, if you remember Meryl from last time. If you look really close, you've got that Photoshop chunky dot I was telling you about. So this one is around a 45 or a 50 dot, which is similar to what we'll be doing. Sixty-second countdown. Okay, we're done. You're gonna see a little bit of a haze from that positive, that oiled positive. That is a good sign. So this is looking really, really good. I'm just gonna rinse it out front and back really carefully, and then I'll give you a zoomed in look of it, just so you can see the individual bitmaps. can be fast. What I usually end up doing is prepping all the screens at the exact same time, letting them sit, going for a break, coming back, and then I whip them all out. Okay, how's the view? Game plan. I want to show you how I register the paper, the screen, what I prep before I do absolutely anything. As you can see here, I've got one ready for the cyan, for the yellow, for the magenta, and then one for the black. Each time I'll wheel over the colors so you can see exactly what I'm doing as best as I can show you. Normally, I would just use one table, switch the screens, but this is a demo, right? You need packaging tape. You're going to need some masking tape. And I suggest that you use these registration pins. They're not foolproof, so I'm going to show you two different ways of registering these colors, but have them handy. And they also come with little tiny plastic tabs. So I prepare all of my paper in advance. This is the image I'll be printing on top of with those little tabs. So you can see on the back, I just tape them onto the back and then I warm up that tape with a hairdryer and it warms up the kind of glue and then you can peel them off without damaging your paper afterwards, okay? I place my positive that I want to print directly on my test print and then I can see underneath the screen exactly where it's going to land each time. So I only need to really register once. And then because of those tabs, I'll tape down these two tabs in place. You can't see that yet. There you go. I'll tape them down in place and I know where to put each piece of paper each time, okay? Another thing that I've added here is a piece of acetate down and I've taped it onto one side. If your tabs move, if they shuffle, that's going to throw off your whole registration. So if you have a piece of acetate here, you can print on it, flip it aside, put your paper underneath, register it perfectly, flip it out of the way, and then print. So sometimes I don't even use the tabs because they frustrate me sometimes. They move around, they get in the way, and I'll only use the acetate method. Something for you to think about. It's good to have it here just in case things go awry. You'll notice on the back of my screen here, as per usual when printing, I've got 2 or 3 pieces of mat board just to raise up the screen a little bit. I'm always talking about the perfect snap. So when this is down, the screen mesh is not making contact with the table. It's roughly 3 or 4 millimeters away, okay? You need that snap to get a really good clean print. Another little tip and trick that I always do, and this is kind of controversial. I put down a little bit of sticky tack spray. I suggest using where is it? Here it is. It's a fabric textile adhesive, which means it's only tacky and it's not sticky. Here we go. And I remember having this conversation with this woman once, and she's like, if you need to put down that spray adhesive, you're not printing properly. And I'm like, what? I don't think that's true. And anything to help you make a better print, why wouldn't you want to do it, right? So it's a little bit tacky now. I'm going to take a piece of paper just to remove a little bit of the tackiness because I don't want to rip my paper. I just want to hold it in place. If you're printing a big flat area, that's the hardest thing to do because your paper is going to want to stick to the bottom of the screen. A little bit of tack is going to help you. If you have access to one of those vacuum tables, heck yes, for CMYK, please use that. It will save you so much stress down the road. Let's see what's happening. All right, so I want to register my cyan ink to this image right here. I'm physically looking through the screen. Make sure you can see exactly what I see. I'm looking right through the screen to make sure it's squared up. I push it down a little bit. I'm looking for my corners. It's looking pretty good. At this point, I'm going to remove, deposit it. And this is my test piece of paper, so I don't really care what happens to it too much. But I always print on, I would say 3 or 4 pieces of scrap paper first before I go on to my good edition. And my scrap paper is always the exact same size as my good paper. So if I'm doing, I think I have like 11 pieces of paper all in total here, I might lose maybe 10% as I go through the different processes. Okay, so keep that in mind. I'm just gonna go for it and we're gonna see what happens. Before I do that, I wanna talk to you about ink. So I reach for the biggest one I can possibly find. Cyan, I buy them in the gallon, obviously, because I'm teaching with them, right? These are meant for the CMYK process, so they're already ever so slightly transparent. They're meant to be layered, okay? I think for what I want them for, that they're too potent. So I always like thin them down with the transparency. So I would probably do something closer to my pre-mix a little bit. I'm using 40% pigment, 60% transparency, okay? And when I say transparency, I actually mean, you know, a transparent base. So that's your pigment, your ink without pigment, okay? So if you think about these inks, like they go a long way. It's kind of like your Kool-Aid to your water situation. Like a little bit of this, you can print way with it, okay? So what did I say? We've got 40% pigment, 60% the transparent base. My other little tip for you is if you're just starting this out for the first time, or if you're in a really dry room, add a little bit of what's called a retarder to your ink and it keeps it open a little bit longer. So Speedball sells one, some other companies sell them as well. I add a little bit of glycerin, just a few drops of it and stir it in really, really well. And that does the exact same thing. It keeps it wet longer. I'm just gonna give it a little stir. It's been sitting for a day because you want that consistency of like maple syrup. If it doesn't run off the edge of your spatula like that, then you're in trouble. It's just gonna give you issues. Another little tip, if you don't have glycerin or the retarder around, a little tiny, like 2 thimbles full of water will just refresh because it's water-based, right? It will just loosen it up a little bit. Okay, we're looking pretty good. Maybe I should print something. Oh, I get all nervous and my fingers start to, ooh. Okay. My technique might be different from your technique. Mine works for me, and that's all I'll say about that. We're gonna start with the cyan because you can actually see it better to register the yellow to. If you print with yellow first, and then you're looking through a yellow mesh, you're not gonna be able to see where to register that image to. So I'm gonna pour my ink at the bottom. You don't need a lot. I'm just gonna do one pass. Of course, I just got it all over my thumb, so unprepared. Beautiful squeegee. This is a medium durometer, but it's very, very sharp as well. This is a nice brand new fresh one that I managed to get. It's the perfect size. Well, it's a little bit big actually. I'm going to lift the screen, get the whole squeegee into as per usual. A little bit of pressure and push it forward. You'll see the whole image kind of appears. Let it down. I'm going to print on that piece of acetate first. So I'm going to flip it underneath. Make sure it's flat. 45-degree angle, pressure, back, pop it up. Flood it forward. Everyone always forgets to flood it forward. Keep it flooded, keep it moist, and then it will always look good. So you can see on the acetate, it's pretty, it's subtle, and that's what you want. This is a subtle process that gains as you go. If that comes out way too dark, way too intense, your whole image is going to be intense. So this has got to look pretty subtle. I'm happy with that placement. So I'm going to temporarily prop up my screen. And I'm going to use these tabs because that's what they're here for. And I'm going to place them underneath those tabs that I already put on my paper. So here's another thing, like I'm using this like white melamine kind of weird surface. It doesn't always like to hold tape. In an ideal world, I would just have glass, right? That's something really, really simple. Where's my other tab? There it is. Something easy to clean, constantly stays flat, and tape sticks to glass really, really well. Okay. So do not forget to remove your piece of acetate. The amount of times that I've reprinted over that acetate, many. We'll just flip it out of the way, tuck it down, right onto the good paper. Same deal. I'll take this off. Ever so carefully take it off. While you got the tabs. Layer 1. Doesn't look like a heck of a lot. Right to the drawing rack. And because you've got those tabs on there, you don't have to register again. You know exactly where they're going. And this is where you just go into like machine mode and stop thinking and just whip them all out. All right, give me your questions. I'm just gonna go to town.
I've got a question here for you. Someone's asking if the blue tape is just masking tape, but blue, or is it special for printmaking?
This is just the same thing as the frog tape, the green stuff, only this was cheaper. Just masking tape will do the exact same thing. Like this is probably painter's tape. And it was just cheaper to buy in bulk that way. You can't see what I'm doing. I'm just throwing them onto the drying rack behind me. By the time I do my third print, my first one's dry. That's why I love this process. That kind of sharp, squeegee sound you're hearing is because my screens are really tight and really fresh and really new. That's what you need, and that's what you should be hearing each time. I had this student who had a hearing aid, and that would always set her off each time, and I felt so bad. So our compromise was she just turned it off during class. Because you can't like not make that sound. I felt bad. Once upon a time, I did an edition of, I think it was 400 7-color posters this way. And I spread it out over 2 evenings. And I would suggest never doing that. My back was killing me. It's that weird angle, right? Small of your back. Keep in mind that this is a fairly small image as well, which means you can get away with a smaller squeegee, especially if you pull it left to right. And then you have to push down with less force, so that'll be a lot easier on your back.
There's another question here for you. Shirley's asking if you use dampened Reeves paper.
Can you say that one more time, please?
Shirley's asking if you use dampened Reeves paper.
No, At the moment, I'm printing on completely dry Arnhem paper, ARNHEM, which, yes, it's a Speedball product, and I don't promote everything Speedball, but I love it. I don't use damp because I'm printing with water-based inks, and I don't want them to spread. I want them to just kiss the surface and stay put. However, it's kind of funny that you said that. I wanted the appeal of like a watercolor screen print once. So I did dampen some watercolor paper. I blotted it really, really well, and then printed on it and did a CMYK process of marigolds. And I basically made an edition of watercolor looking screen prints, which was kind of cool. I will print on anything that is smooth, not too toothy. I'm almost done. And that holds your image on the surface. You don't want it to absorb it and pull it in. You want it to sit on top.
Another question here. Christine asked if you have to calendar your paper before screen printing.
No, you don't need to worry about stretching or anything like that because your pressure is minimal and it's completely down. It's not like you're putting it through a press and you're pushing it all in one direction. The only difference that you might want to consider, that's such a good question, is if you're printing a large image with a large screen, your screen moves, right? Like it's a drum. So you'll start pulling on one side, and then as you pull it across, your mesh does kind of gather at one end a little bit more. So compensate for that when you're registering your second color. Sometimes I register my second color like 0.5 millimeter higher, and that kind of compensates for that. It's, you know, that's a great question. They got one more. I can't just do one, you know, it's a print. You got to do like 500.
I've included, just for everybody, I've included some links in the chat to items that Myles has been talking about throughout if you're looking for them, just so everybody knows.
Just gonna move this out of the way. That's one color done. Okay, so I'm gonna give you a little preview of what I just did. I just stacked them over there on the drying rack. So the top one that I just finished is now dry. Like it's fast. You're putting down such a thin layer of ink. You don't really need to worry too much. Similar situation, I've primed the surface, a little bit of tacky adhesive. I'm picking up those registration tabs from the cyan, bringing them back over here, just getting them ready. I'm gonna do the exact same thing. I'm gonna print with the yellow next on here, then I'll attach the tabs, and then we'll go for it. This is where you just like stare at me for a little while. I'm mixing in a little bit of that glycerin. I usually pre-mix my my special little recipes for the CMYK mixtures in advance. And if I'm doing a CMYK class, I'll just mix it for the entire class. You know, you're always welcome to alter it, to make it your own. But once you find that recipe that just really works for you, stick with it. Like if you want your images to be more blue, add more blue, right? Same deal, older squeegee, flip forward, printing on that acetate. Okay, there's the image. Maybe I should grab the print. Oh, it's a workout. Okay, so what I'm going to do, prop this up a little bit so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. This is where I get to use my palette. Okay. That's why you've got that acetate. You flip it right over top. We're going to get that beautiful secondary color of green. But we're also going to start to get some of our kind of like cerulean colors. There's quite a bit of blue in that sky. And then as you went down a little more, you got the colors. This is a square image, rectangular image, which makes my life a little bit easier. If you have an organic one, like this image here, for example, you're spending a bit more time registering. As soon as you got that spot though, put your tabs in.
Quick
So
question
remember-
about, oh, sorry, Myles. Ginger just asked, how do you choose the registration tab size?
Tab size? That's a good question. I just go for one that's easy for me to pick up and easy to snap in. So as long as your plastic tabs match your metal tabs, I don't think it really matters what size you have at all. Yeah. Like I know Above Ground definitely sells like the packs. I think it's 100 plastic tabs and 2, maybe even 4 of the metal tabs with them. All right, here we go. It's magic. Okay, so it still looks like a heck of a lot of nothing until you get down that third color. But at least it's registered really well. I'm looking at my corners. I don't see a whole bunch of blue or yellow popping out on its own. Maybe a little bit of yellow. So that one side there, a little strip up the side. So you could compensate for it, you know, change your metal tab positions. Keep in mind, you're also hand printing your screen print. Like, I'll never forget, like, somebody pulls the second, third color, it looks amazing. You know, you run around showing people, you come back, and then your screen dries. So remember, you're still doing a water-based process that dries very quickly, usually to your benefit, but not always. So if you're gonna be really finicky with the color and the registration, just be prepared for that. So you may need to stop. You may need to take out your screen, wash it, register again. I've done that many times, you know, especially when you're doing large editions and you want them perfect because, you know, you're putting lots of time and energy into it. Why would you print one, not like it, and then keep going? No, stop yourself. You have to have that chat alive. One thing I should mention as well is the paper that you're printing onto, don't be cheap with it. Card works very well, like a Canson card. But remember, you are putting down layers upon layers of water. When you do CMYK, you're putting little tiny dots of watery ink. You're not doing a big, flat, heavy area. So you can get away with using a thinner paper. But if you then start adding to it, the big areas of flat color, big juicy transparency for gradients, your paper is going to start to buckle. Okay, so you may need to wait a day or two for it to settle and flatten again. You may have to flatten your paper as you go. So I usually go for like a 200 DSM or more if I can. Nothing toothy, especially when you're doing photographic detail, because you don't want to lose any of your information. It's got to be flat. Almost done this color. You know, this is like the world's fastest CMYK multi-print, just to let you know. Some people, they push when they're doing their print instead of pull. To me, that's really frustrating, like physically, but it is useful if you're printing on fabric because you do push a little bit more of the ink through. So, you know, there's benefits to many techniques. Almost done here. What other questions can I answer?
If anybody has questions, please feel free to put them in the chat.
My favorite red wine is from Argentina.
Naomi just unmuted. Naomi just asked, what is your favorite printmaking process?
Good question. I can't give you one because I will adapt my print process based on the facilities I have access to. And if I screen print for ages, I will get so sick of it. And then I'll just go do some copper etchings and play with some acid, right? I also am known for fusing processes. So that was the last one. So I may screen print something photographic, just like this image, onto a piece of copper and use that as a resist and then put that into a bath of acid and then print it like a regular etching. So how do you get a photographic result in a traditional hand process? That's that. Yellow, complete. I've been doing a lot of laser woodblocks recently. So taking traditional woodblock and, you know, bringing in technology like I just mentioned.
There's another question here for you. Christine said, I've heard that one can screen print over other prints like lithos, etching, and relief. But if the first print is printed on an oil-based ink, can one then screen print on top it with acrylic ink?
I think my unprofessional answer is absolutely yes. Anyone in academia, historically printing would say no, keep the processes pure. And with the quality of ink increasing like it has over the past like 40 years, heck yes you can. Will that acrylic over top of oil start to peel over time? Yes. Will it be during your lifetime? No. So if you're concerned about longevity of a piece, I would not do it. But I do it all the time. So one of the assignments that I used to give students, for example, would be to do a hand-drawn black and white lithograph on a beautiful fibrous paper, and then to hit it with spots of color, like spot tones through Screenprint. So they'll print maybe 30 black and white figure drawings, and then color in the figure, and then change it to make a series instead of an edition. That's an idea. That's an idea. But yeah, I think like any professional printer would be like What?
Another quick question. Marilyn asked, do you save the leftover ink for future printing?
Absolutely do. Unless I'm crunched for time. But yes, I definitely do. I do. And I refresh them too as I go. Magenta, one of my favorites. You know, if you love magenta as much as I do, you need to know the artist Audi Lang, Aodilang. He is this amazing, amazing guy. He's a friend of mine. I met him when I was teaching upstate New York, and he puts this kind of filter on everything he does, and it's magenta, and it is gorgeous. He knows how to capture color. There it is, a beautiful drip. So this is where you start to make some decisions. Sometimes you can do cyan, yellow, magenta, and then stop. You might kind of think, oh, that's good enough. Black might be too heavy, that might ruin what I want to do. Let's see. Onto the acetate. Ooh, it is subtle. I can hardly see that. Okay, so here we have options. Either we print it as is, we'll have a look, and then I'll try a double hit, and we'll see what the difference might be. Intriguing. Registration again. This is going to make registration. It's hard to find an edge. And grab those little tabs. So this is where all of our oranges are going to come from. That beautiful villa. What do they call it on that? Oh, what's that, like bachelor show when they kick them out of the building? The hacienda. Yeah, it's not that fancy. Okay, here we go. Magenta. One pull. We'll see if we like it. It could be better. I'm going to hit it twice and we're going to see what happens. It's a bit blah. Something a little more intense. So instead of like pulling it and flooding it and pulling it, I'm going to pull half the ink, not flood it, and pull the second half. I don't want to risk moving my paper around. Half, back up, second half. Better, 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 better. A little more intense. Looks all right, but we need that black to really pull out all the details. Quite a few people print with plastisol inks, which are beautiful. Like they give you a very, very shiny and saturated results. But it's really difficult to clean. And I wouldn't say I would use them in any small space. You need proper ventilation for it. So it's not for everybody. I've always used the Speedball names. I was taught to use them. I switched to system in the UK to using the Speedball water soluble, water cleanup.
Really difficult to hear you.
Is it?
Yes, when you're talking with your face down.
I'm gonna have
Sorry.
to do two faces. No, it's good. I want you to hear what I'm saying. What if I get a bit louder? Does that help?
You were talking about some kind of ink.
Yes, a plastisol ink. So it's more saturated, but it's also really, really hard for you to clean it up. So unless you're in a really professional space with ventilation, I don't suggest you use them. Almost done.
So we've got a couple questions here if you have a sec.
Sweet.
So Marilyn asked, how long can you leave the screen not cleaned without it getting clogged or damaged?
Oh, about 5 minutes. So those screens that I haven't cleaned out, I would never normally do that. Okay. I would clean them out instantly just to save me stress and slack down the road. Like, I'm lucky that I'm in a really, I don't want to say a damp room, but a humid room. So I have a little bit more time than normal, but instantly, if you can. Otherwise, you've got to go play with chemistry and some nasty stuff and a power washer. You could also just use the power of your shower, just your shower head. You're using gravity. Let it fall down. That should be enough pressure for you. Almost complete.
So we've got another question here that I feel like I can probably answer as well. Pauline asked, what is the easiest way to screen print at home when one doesn't have access to equipment? I see some use fabric and create DIY small frames. Is there any products useful to do screen printing at home from above ground? So an easy way to go about this is we do sell screen printing kits. We sell beginner ones, intermediate ones, which I think Rachel is gonna, yeah, she's gonna link those in here. But Myles, if you have any other tips and tricks to screen printing at home with like lack of supplies.
Absolutely. This little trolley was DIY built, right? You don't need this trolley. You could use any type of a wooden surface and just screw in little clamps. You just need a secure place with a hinge. So sometimes I just use a board and put clamps on it. It just has to be, you know, smooth and washable. And a dark closet. If you're going to do a photographic process like we did, like exposing your print, you just need a closet. So Screenprint is the most DIY friendly out of all the printmaking processes, I think. And it's usually the one that most students set up when they graduate and they don't have facilities anymore. So I would suggest fully then staying with the water-based inks, or else you're just gonna poison yourself over time, and nobody wants that. Last one. Yeah. Okay. 3 colors. Meh, it needs the black to really make it a bit more punchy, okay? Registration's not bad. I rushed that magenta a little bit so you can see it's off on the top. Can you see that? No, you can't. It's off by like a millimeter. Normally, yes, I would stop. Right now, no. One more. Get my tabs. Move this out of the way. Lock it in place will be helpful. I don't know about you, but the first thing I do every time I go into a studio is I put wheels on everything. I'm constantly changing what I want to do in that space. Smaller squeegee, so I can't pull it top to bottom. I'm just going to awkwardly pull it left to right. It's going to be less pressure and in theory easier for me to do. But each time I'm going to have to kind of stand inside. That's fine. Same deal with black. I think the mixture in here is 60% pigment, 40% extender. Extender as in transparency. It extends your color. Glycerin again. And the reason why I have, I think, more, I usually add a little more pigment to the black because the CMYK processed black from Speedball, I find is a little too transparent for my liking. Okay, so I don't usually thin it down too much. They also have a really great poster black, which is just a bit more intense. So depending on what you're looking for, it's good to have some options. Those two, it's supposed to go on the other side. Let's move it around. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. Just like before, flood forward. Printing onto the acetate first. Ooh, yeah, this is going to make a big difference here. Okay, grab those prints. This is when you have like a print assistant. When I'm doing my big editions or big prints, I usually have at least one other person. So somebody with the clean fingers, moving the paper, and then usually me pulling the print. All right. So if your black layer is off, everybody sees it. So you can get away with the light yellow. You can probably get away with a little bit of the magenta. But if your black is off, everyone's going to say the black's off. It always do. And pushing down the acetate to make sure it's full on. Like that. Let's see what that is. Uh-oh. It's one of those surfaces. It's fresh tape. See? Not every surface likes to stick. Thankfully, we've got the backup acetate for that reason. You just have to register to it every single time, right? Bit of a pain, but if you're using different pieces of paper with different sizes, that's one way around it. Here we go. With the fourth and final layer. So that block is probably a little too heavy for what I'd like. But you know, you're not going to know until you do a test first. I'm going to print the rest of them. And then let me show you a side-by-side comparison first. You know, like you go from 70s aesthetic and you kind of need that black to really pop the details. If you want something more photographic than this, I'm going to suggest you go to the 310, 300 mesh, but you're going to have to work faster because that screen wants to dry really, really quick because it's so tight and so detailed. What do we think about the process?
Looks good.
I was waiting for someone to say, not worth the effort. Just be really careful about these tabs. If they move, I'm in trouble.
Marilyn said you make it look so easy.
Oh, try. I remember years and years and years ago, before Photoshop made it easy to do separations, I hired or paid for a company to take my digital image and to print it out, CMYK, onto film positives for me. And it cost me, I want to say between $60 and $80 for an image that was maybe 11 by 17. And yes, it was absolutely beautifully done and it exposed really nicely to the screen, but wow, that was not sustainable. The only problem, if you want to work a little bit bigger, for example, and you want to do the oil photocopy or printout method that I showed, it's hard to find a printer that prints on cheap thin paper, black and white, 11 by 17. And if you do find it, hang on to it. So I have students all the time printing out 8.5 by 11 and then cutting and trying to piece them together with tiling. And if you do that, ultimately, you're not going to get it lined up perfectly. So you have to get a little creative with how you compose your image. There are ways around it. They're not always easy.
Naomi asked, would you work this quickly with 4 different colors and trolleys if it wasn't a demo, like say 1 color at a time?
No, this is like opulent, right? So I would do 1 screen, 1 trolley, go have lunch, come back, 2nd color. I would pace it out. I would go a heck of a lot slower, and I would have adjusted for that magenta. I may have made it a little more punchy. I would have stopped after the first black one and made it less punchy, because that's a bit too blown out, that image for me. But I don't know if you can see the paper that I'm printing on, that's 3 layers. It's starting to, well, it looks really flat on your screen. When I put it down, I see little buckles in this area. Because you're putting down water, 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 and it needs a bit of time to chill for those fibers to relax again. You know, your tack is only going to go so far for holding it down, which is why a vacuum table, which you can DIY, you can completely make yourself, is really beneficial if you're looking to whip things out really quickly. Okay. But yeah, I would never do 4 layers within 2 hours. This is the exact same way they do t-shirts, only between colors, on like a rondelle system. They heat set it, with heat flash. And we'll be using like a plastisol ink, fabric ink dyes. And they would do all CMYK at the exact same time because those inks don't dry nearly as fast and they don't dry without curing with the heat. So that's one of the exceptions to the rule. Oh my gosh, last one. You usually don't smut it forward for the last print because you want to get that ink out of there, not into your image.
Quick question. So Natalie asked, when you said you'd adjust the magenta and blacks punchiness, would that involve new screens or like just the inks?
It would just be like an ink modification. Like the screens I'm fairly happy with. Like there are some little areas that it may not have blown out perfectly. Like that sky is looking a little dubious, but I'd go with it for, you know, like for this image. You know, if it's not exactly what you want, I would just stop, figure out what's going on. But 9 times out of 10, it's an ink modification issue. Yeah. Did we want to see reclaiming a screen or are we okay with that?
Let us know in the chats if you want to see him clean the screen out.
Because, you know, I could just explain it really quick as well. You've got ink on your screen. Your priority is to get the ink out of your screen. I don't care what you do first, but get that ink out of the screen. It's going to be wet. You know, save as much as you can. Let the screen dry 100% before you start to strip it with the emulsion remover. So you're spraying the front, you're spraying the back, you're giving it a little generous rub, and I let it sit for 2 minutes. Let the chemistry dissolve the green emulsion away. But that screen has to be dry before you put on that chemistry, or else you're diluting it with the wet screen and the water. And if you don't strip it perfectly the first time, it's 10 times harder to strip it the second time. So have a little patience with it. And you don't need a power washer for that. If you have one, it's amazing. But you could just use the pressure of your shower. But then you got to be patient, right? So it's got to be the first kind of hit. And then I usually degrease it with a little bit of vinegar, diluted vinegar and water, because, you know, fingers have been on it, ink's been on it. And then I set it in front of a fan dryer or use a non-hot, non-heat hair dryer. Dry it off and it's good to coat again. That's one of the things I really like about Screen is that if you take really good care of your screens, they'll last you a lifetime. Maybe not quite a lifetime, maybe 40, 50 years, a short lifetime.
So it looks like the consensus was sure, why not? So let's see it.
All right. Let me use that one I exposed earlier.
Before you go, Christine's just asking, do you wear a respirator when you wash it out?
Controversial. I have good ventilation in here. Having said that, at the last place I worked, they did not have the best ventilation. It is always suggested that you use it for the stripper, for the emulsion remover, and for the brown filler remover. Crack a window, respirator, and it's not just the dust mask one, it's the other canister one. I think it's recommended, but I don't think it's like enforced that you have to do it. So that's probably not the best advice, but hold your breath. No, I'm kidding. Don't hold your breath. Open a window. You should be absolutely fine. I have a fan in there which constantly circulates the air out, and I've never had a problem. If you're in a confined space, you're going to start coughing. All right. So just be aware of that. You know, get that in your bathroom, get the little ventilation going on, garage, outside. again, it's mainly water-based materials, so it's going to go into the groundwater. You know, like most things that we end up doing in the art world. I'll show you what I mean. It should strip out really quick. We're going for a walk again. So I put the photo emulsion, where are we? In here? Sorry. I put the photo emulsion in a regular spray bottle. It comes in like a jug form, but put it in the spray bottle. Don't dilute it. Whatever you do, if you dilute it, you're just going to give yourselves trouble down the road. And be generous with it. Front and back. I'm usually going to wait 2 minutes, but because we just coated and just exposed that screen, it's really fresh. I'm going to use the power washer and it's going to fly out easily. Magic. That screen degreaser that I showed you is red because it was in the studio when I got here and I'm using it up. Vinegar does the exact same thing. Watered down vinegar. Your fingers are greasy and oily, even if you just wash them. So if you touch your screen, you're going to fill in those little mesh holes, okay? So yeah, that's the quick, easy, small CMYK version of doing a 4-color process. Not the only way. I was fully prepared for people to say, I don't do it that way. And that's completely fine. I haven't seen a big difference between switching up the yellow and the magenta in terms of outcome. Computers who do the printing for humans, they start with the yellow. I don't because I can't see it through the mesh. Like it's really difficult to register that. So if you think back to like lithographic printing for magazines, they usually do their yellows first. What can I answer for you?
Yeah, let's do a little Q&A. So throw your questions in the chat. If you want to unmute, go for it. You can talk to Myles.
Myles, I still worry, even though the inks are water soluble, I still worry about the stuff going down the drains.
Yep, that's completely fair. I'm looking at all the excess that I have on the screens, and I can get 90% of that back into the jar, which I'm fairly comfortable with that, but I understand exactly what you're saying. Quite a few institutions have built in like a filtration system, like to the bottom of their washout booths,
Yeah.
which get changed every few months, but you're absolutely right.
What about the emulsion?
That's a good question. this is one of the safest ones that I've seen being used recently.
Okay.
Up until about 10 years ago, there are other brands out there, obviously. They seem to need more harsh chemistry to strip. So like this is one that's essentially school grade. So healthier-ish. I don't want to say healthier, but less traumatizing to the universe. How's that? But you're right.
Okay.
It's a big
Yeah.
concern.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
Okay.
think it's a step in the right direction, but it's not perfect. I'll say that.
no. Thanks.
You're welcome. I do remember walking into a print studio in the UK where they have ever so slightly different health practices, and they were using oil-based inks, and they were using plastisol and mineral spirits to clean out their screens. So they had this whole spray booth, and the guys would just walk in and spray mineral spirits, recycled in a drum, but still mineral spirits, to clean off these screens. I couldn't breathe from the front door. They're in that for 12 hours a day. I don't understand how that's still allowed. But beautiful work.
Another question in the chat here. So Ginger's asking, have you ever pushed the envelope with Speedball screen emulsion and used it out of date once it's mixed?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I'll do that little jar that you saw. That's been used at the end of last semester. My tip is like keep it in the fridge. That keeps the longevity of it going a little bit longer. I've used one a year out of date, gave it a really good stir, and it works completely fine. If anything, you may have to increase your exposure time by like a minute more because it's less photosensitive. But like, I run out of supplies all the time in the middle of classes, and I have to figure out compromises, right? And I don't like wasting anything either. So I've been quite happy with the emulsion, how that's been working. And I did just see that Speedball just released individual emulsion sheets, which looks really cool. So you don't need to use a mesh. It's just a flimsy sheet that you expose your image to. So you tape it down and then you pull it. Kind of cool, kind of cool. I kind of like that. I might give it a go. I can see that working really well for rounded surfaces. So you could wrap it around something and then print it that way. That's kind of fun. What else expires on me a lot? Nothing. Nothing else. We use too much of it too fast. Ink-wise, it's worth mentioning, I did a residency years ago at the Banff Center, which is like, if you ever have the privilege to go there, go. But you have to take all of your materials with you. So I bought these gallon big things, and I brought my CMYK colors, and it cost me a little more than I wanted to spend as a student. But I just donated those last year or the year before to a college. So they would have been 10 plus years old, still going strong. As long as you seal them up and keep the air out, they're going to last you a very long time.
Ginger, are you asking, do we have the emulsion sheets? Just want to confirm.
It's like a brand new product. They were advertising it maybe yesterday.
Yeah. If you're referring to the sheets, we don't have them yet because, like Myles just said, they just came out. So hopefully we'll be bringing them in soon. So keep an eye out on our website there.
They look really cool. I saw a video on their Instagram where Arsenal Handicraft, they're a great printing duo on Instagram, and they're also a demo artist for Speedball. They were showing the process, and they were doing a DIY home exposure of them, and it worked really, really well. So that'll be worth looking up. Arsenal Handicraft on Instagram.
That's great. So if anybody else has any questions, feel free to ask them now before we finish up.
If you're trying to get experimental with these inks, like, yeah, try the CMYK, and then you don't have to use CMYK, right? So you could still do the color separations and then print them monochromatic. or print them with different shades of grays. So just having the separations, I think, is a bit, once you've done it once or twice, you know what you're going to get. So sometimes I'll do the separations and then I'll look just at the yellow layer. I'll edit that bitmap and go in and fill in like a whole window, a solid black on my yellow screen, which means that will print a solid yellow. So, you know, mix it up a little bit. You know you're going to get something photographic. It gets to the point where you're like, who cares? Because you know what you're going to get. So destroy your positives a little bit more. You know, I print these out. There's nothing stopping you from, this is the magenta layer, magenta. Nothing stopping you from going in with a Sharpie and drawing onto this further, right? So anywhere you want to print magenta, solid, color it in solid. Block the light on your exposure. So once you know, you get the general process, start mucking around with these and you'll get way more interesting prints, guaranteed.
Natalie, I think she's just confirming who you were talking about before about the Instagram account there.
Yes, 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 yes. And if you want, I can probably quickly find the link for you.
Okay, cool.
They're an awesome artist duo. Yeah, that's the end. There they are, Dennis and Christina Jacobs. I will cut and paste. They pump out posters and awesome videos like there's no tomorrow. There they are. I just invited them to a portfolio of screen prints that I'm putting together, like an exchange portfolio. And there's this idea that screen printing is very DIY or posters only, right? So this whole idea behind this portfolio is to take that idea and to completely obliterate it and to take screen print to the next level where it should be, with new inks, new processes, with lithography, with etching. Like it should all be kind of up there. And this isn't like the cute little cousin of printmaking. This is like one of the parents of printmaking, right? So we're taking this DIY thought and pushing it to the extreme. So give me a few months and we'll get that pumped out. Actually, keep asking questions. I want to show you one more thing.
Ginger just said, it wasn't so much a question, but she said she's done up to 2 colors, but she's kind of terrified of registration. So your casual approach is super interesting. Thank you so much.
Oh, totally casual. So when you're doing 2 colors, is it duotone you're doing? Maybe. Look up duotones. They'll give you a very photographic result at the same time. But the only thing that might drive you a little crazy is having your registration tabs move if you use it, or like that acetate flip is a lifesaver. As long as your acetate doesn't move, you'll be absolutely fine. One more print I wanted to show you is, so I was just talking about that portfolio of pushing screen print to the next level. This is a CMYK screen print by one of my ex-students. Look at this. Shiny disco balls.
That's amazing.
I love it. You go in close and then you start seeing the bitmap.
Wow.
So she's using a screen, like I mentioned before, which is 310. So you get more dots per inch, but you're never going to look at it that close. You're going to look at it from here. Right? The one thing I really wish she did, this is CMYK, she can do so much better than this, is to take a glossy overprint and hit those disco balls with a glossy finish, right? That would really push this over the edge. Chloe Strang just graduated. Congratulations, Chloe. I'll send this to her.
Send her the YouTube link. She got a shout out.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, screen print. I rarely use screen print for just making a screen print these days. It's kind of a vehicle to make a more mixed media approach to a more interesting print, right? Like stitch into it. Chine-collé, collage, fabric, wood, glass, plastic. Why does it have to be paper all the time? So boring. Ooh, do I have one kicking around right now? Upstairs in my studio, I definitely do. Sorry, we're cleared out. Normally I would just open a drawer and find a whole bunch of student prints, but we had a big clear out at the end of the semester. My website, squirrelpigeonfish.com, you'll find them there.
Okay, awesome. Well, if anybody has any last questions, let's get those in. Otherwise, I think we can start wrapping up. Just want to thank Myles for leading this demo. It was super, super cool. And I think everyone really enjoyed it.
Great.
And everyone look out in your email in about an hour or so. Allie's going to be emailing you with a 15% off coupon to use on some of the Speedball products that Myles used today. So that's great. And yeah, I hope everyone had a good time.
Hey, thanks for having me. Always a good time. I miss Toronto so much.
Always great having you, Myles.
It was awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thanks everybody for joining. Just let everyone filter out.
This is where we start the real conversation, right?
Yeah. It's the good stuff now.
This is water. It looks like a beer.
San Pellegrino.
It is Friday.
Oh, thankfully, yes, it is.
Yeah. I think Wally messaged Rachel. He had to head out early, but
He said hello.
Tell him hi back for me, please.
I will.
Hey, thanks you too. That's always fun.
yeah.
That was great.
I know there's always a bit of a lull when I'm actually doing the real printing.
Oh no, it's okay. It's really interesting to watch, honestly.
Okay, good. Good.
Good.
Let me know what else you need from me. If any follow-up questions, I'm
Mhm.
around. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll send you an email if we have anything.
Yeah.
I'm sure maybe you'll get DMs from people on Instagram.
Hey,
Anyway.
who knows? Who knows? Have a great weekend, you two,
You
I
and
do.
hope to see you soon. Hope it gets warm for you tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yes. Thank
hopefully. Okay. Bye,
Bye,
Myles.
you two.
Bye.
Bye.